Hello and welcome to the second episode of the mini-series I affectionately like to call Casting Reflections on Black Mirror. With me is my co-host for this mini-series, Dan Strange from the Just Football Pod. Hi, Dan.
Good evening. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I think we're recording this later than we normally have. I'm shattered anyway, and you've got a bottle of wine in front of you. So
Yeah,
we'll see. I might have to edit out like an hour's worth of us sleeping, probably as we nod off.
the funny thing is, you don't know how many I've had before I got on this call.
So... I can hear rattling. I can hear rattling every time you move. So yeah, keep still. I was going to say I've got a long day, but yeah, I know you've had a busy week yourself. So what I do want to address though is I want to put a bit more structure around this episode, and I think that was me not doing it so much in the last episode. But knowing us two, that structure will probably go out the window after 10 minutes anyway, so we'll see how we do. So this week we are going to do Black Mirror Season 1, Episode 2, which is called 50 Million Credits. But before we do, you just said actually we should have rated each episode out of 10. So we didn't do that for episode 1, National Anthem. So as it was your idea, I want you to go first. What would you have given National Anthem out of 10?
That's really putting me on the spot. So I know I suggested it, but I'm going to ask what this rating means. Is it enjoyment rating or is it quality of the episode?
Now you're throwing a question at me. I think it's overall. I'm going to do mine as enjoyment because I think the quality for me leads into enjoyment. So just overall what you enjoyed, how much you enjoyed it.
I'll give the first one an 8. I think it's a solid episode. It had you gripped, and as the first one of the series and the whole franchise, I think it's pretty solid. So let's go for an 8.
I was going to say 8 as well because, like I think we said, it's unusual in that it doesn't feel like, if you were remembering Black Mirror like I was before we started this, it doesn't feel like a typical Black Mirror episode or what it becomes. Just the shock value at which it introduces itself, I think, for me, is what puts it up there. Okay, so episode 2, 15 million credits. So I was looking into this. So it actually first aired on Channel 4 on 11th December 2011. So we are talking 12 years ago for these programmes, or the first series.
It feels like they've been made quite well for something that was 12 years ago. Like it stands a test.
Dated, yeah.
Not dated. Like if they released both the episodes we've watched so far this week, you wouldn't know. Like they could be done now, and you'd be none the wiser if they're over 10 years old. We
were mentioning it last week, and if we didn't, or last episode, it's currently on. You can watch all of Black Mirror on Netflix, but it's interesting to say that it did start on Channel 4 over here. This was written by Charlie Brooker, who's the creator. What I didn't know, this was also written by his wife, Connie Huck, who I'd forgotten he'd married. And I said to you that, yes, do you remember, she was a Blue Peter presenter. So I found that. So she went from Blue Peter to writing sort of quite serious episodes of Black Mirror. Yeah, as you do. Just a brief overview, and then what I thought we'd do is we'll go into the episode. I'll hit the highlights and then jump in and we'll have a chat about it as we go. And then I thought at the end, like we did on the previous one, we'll just discuss what we thought about the episode overall. As a synopsis, it's set in a world where most of society must cycle on exercise bikes in order to earn currency called merits. The episode tells the story of Bing, played by Daniel Kaluuya, who meets Abby, who's played by Jessica Brown Finley, and convinces her to participate in a talent show so she can become famous. Now, the inspiration for this idea actually came from Connie Huck, and she said that she did a one-liner that her technology-obsessed husband Brooker would be happy in a room just covered by screens. So that sort of throwaway line conversation. I love how things like this can come out of just a random line, said at home.
Well, we're doing a whole series podcast based on a throwaway comment we've said. So we've kind of inspired ourselves in the same way.
Didn't think of it like that. Well done. Oh, and it's interesting to say. I mean, I didn't look at what stage their careers, but it did have a lot of famous faces in this. So from Daniel Kaluuya, it's got Rupert Everett in it. It had, I've forgotten her name, Hannah Carmen. She's been in a couple of things now. Like she was in the first Ant-Man. Do you remember she was Ghost? Was that the character?
I can't recall.
Oh, there was also one of the other cyclists. She was in the Harry Potter films. But anyway, Starts off, as we said, from that throwaway line. So Bing wakes up and he's in a room, isn't it? It's like a prison cell, but the whole room is just covered in screens. And it's like, instead of an alarm clock, it's like a picture of the sun, isn't it? It's like a cartoony game graphic type thing of a sun rising. Sticks these little earbuds right in his ear. And yeah, as I said, they go down into what looks like an exercise or a gym with a load of bikes, people already on there. And he gets on. And as I said, they're just cycling to earn credits. Now, it's never actually explained why they're doing it. Or oh no, there's a little bit right at the end, I think. But you don't, at this point, know why these people are cycling. They're just getting up, getting on these bikes and cycling. So they're doing that. And as they're doing that, they have got the screen in front of them. They can flick through it almost like augmented reality in a way, or gesture touch, I should say. And you can watch various things, like a porn channel that keeps frequenting, isn't it? Like a babe station. I had to look up what that was. I didn't know what that was. Like a babe station. There's like this weird reality show, isn't there? That the annoying guy, who I did really find annoying, next to him, you know, the one who obviously had a thing about overweight people. Then there was this talent show that keeps popping up as well. Which to me is clearly like the X Factor / Britain's Got Talent. So they're doing that. There's this big famous star singing on this reality show, and he then he on one of his breaks they go to a vending machine, and that's what I liked actually. I'll say it now rather than later, but there's like a vending machine where it's a digital screen. You choose like an apple, and it vends an apple. But I don't know if you saw it. It was really quickly. It says on there, people who bought an apple also liked, and it showed other fruit, and it was like,
oh really?
Amazon.
No, I didn't clock that.
Yeah, and it was kind of just like Amazon. I think everywhere you go now, that's what it does. Whatever website you're on, it says people who viewed this also viewed.
Yeah.
So was it? They were on one of his breaks, so he goes into the toilet one time and he hears like a beautiful voice singing, doesn't he? And it's this Abby, and he obviously takes a shine to her. And he's encouraging her to go on this Hot Shots program. But she says she's only new to whatever they're doing there. And she said she hasn't got enough credits. It would take 6 months to earn it. And so he says, well, it's only 12 million. I think at that point he had 15. And he goes, all right, I'll give you the 12 million that you need. She says you should use it on yourself. But he says, what's he going to do? Buy digital shoes for his avatar or clothes? So he goes to buy it for her, but it's actually 15 million credits, so he buys it, and that just leaves him the 9,000 that he's got. The other thing on this I was going to say is that any action they do costs credits. So like buying food costs credits. If they're watching something like the advert for the babe station, it's called Rafe's Babes, isn't it? Comes up and he dismisses it. That costs him credits. When the X Factor, what was it called here? Hot Shots trailer comes up, he dismisses that costs him credits. So everything is costing him credit. So up till now at this point, because this is then where the story kicks off, what was your take on like the world that they're in and the theme so far?
Well, I found it hard to watch up until that point because I kept on imagining me in that scenario, and I think it would drive me absolutely insane. And some of the things I thought were interesting. Obviously, the room full of screens felt too much, and then you kind of begin to like relate that to today's world about how everyone's on a screen, but this has kind of magnified that and put it all round your whole room. And the other thing I thought was quite interesting was the advertising, and how the advertising was so forceful that you had to watch it or pay money.
Yeah,
because that's essentially what he was doing. Right, he kept on, and even when he shut his eyes, it kind of went all red, didn't it? To a point where he had to open his eyes again and finish watching the advert.
That's right, yeah. And it played like that white noise, didn't it? It was playing an awful noise.
Yeah, when he shut his eyes, and he couldn't put up with it. So he had to watch these adverts, and they were so repetitive. It's not like they were different adverts that showed up all the time. It was a cycle of about three adverts, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I watched that, and I thought, oh my God, like I'd go insane. I'm just not sure I could cope. And it was quite interesting because obviously before he spent the money, he just kept on skipping the adverts, didn't he?
Yeah.
Afterwards, you began to feel for him because he almost had to sit through all the adverts he had to watch. And obviously we'll come on to the bit about the girl going off into the Hot Shots program and doing something different to what she expected. But yeah,
But it's interesting what you said there as well. Sorry about having to pay to skip the adverts, because it is kind of what happens now, isn't it? Like in mobile games, if you get adverts all the time unless you pay to get rid of them. Even Netflix now, aren't Netflix doing the basic package? It will be cheaper, but you've got to watch ads during it or before and after. So it's what's happening now, right?
Yeah, but at least on Netflix you can shut your eyes.
Well,
not watch it
for now.
If we get 5-6 years time, and they can detect eyes shutting, and then they stop playing the adverts.
Can you imagine that the home of Black Mirror introduces stuff like that?
Yeah. It's just I don't know if you ever watch. I'm going to go on a complete tangent at the moment, but I feel like I'm allowed. But I don't know if it reminded me of something that happened in Big Brother years and years and years ago on that reality show. And essentially, as a punishment, one of the guys had to go into a really small box room, and he had to listen to himself say a phrase over and over and over again for about 4 or 5 hours. And I can't remember what the phrase was. I can't remember what the person was. It reminded me of that, because I could just picture this guy in this room listening to his own voice for 4 to 5 hours. And I remember watching that at the time thinking that's just borderline cruelty and getting yourself to insanity. And that very much reminded me, it triggered that thought process. Not that I was a massive Big Brother fan. I just remembered that's part of it.
Well, early series was good, but yeah, that is a real tangent. Maybe we should do a rewatch of all the Big Brothers.
No, please, let's not.
But you're right. And it was like, the impression I got is it was, to all intents and purposes, a prison. Now, at the moment, like I said, you don't know what they're doing there. And especially him, not so much the others, but he just looked so depressed all the time, didn't he?
Yeah.
He wasn't happy to be there. And, it was his room is a tiny room. And like you said, forced to watch things. Then they go to the gym, which is like their exercise room. They've got a basic open canteen, then they go to bed. So, and I think it's interesting to say that in this episode there is no, you never see an outside, or not a real version of the outside anyway.
You kind of expected at some point a bit of zoom out, didn't you? Like, you kind of expected it to zoom out and understand why they were in there.
Yeah.
Was it a prison? Are they cycling those bikes to achieve something on the outside world? I just always expected that zoom out, and it never really came.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't come.
Well, there was, like I said, there's a tiny bit at the end, but you don't get the overall the bigger picture yet. And that, I think, for me, is what was a shame for this episode. But I won't give away my verdict just yet. Yeah. Right. So as we said, up to this point, it's setting the scene. There's this Hot Shots program, which features heavily in ads. There's this Wraiths Babes. Bing meets Abby, buys this entry, which is far more than he thought, so it leaves him now literally 9,500. So anyway, they go to the auditions for this Hot Shots program, and just before she goes on, she's given a drink, isn't she? Something called compliance, and she goes, "What is this?" And they said, "It's for your nerves. We don't want you throwing up on screen." But you see, as soon as she drinks it, it affects her. Anyway, goes on to the stage, and what I love about this is the judge, who's clearly supposed to be Simon Cowell.
Yeah.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah. I wonder if he ever watched that episode and thought, hang on a minute.
I actually think he looks more like Simon Cowell than Simon Cowell does. So there's 3 judges. You've got the Simon Cowell, you've got the lady in the middle, and you've got the guy at the end who is the owner of Wraiths Babe, this channel. So basically, they introduce the judges, and once it gets to the Wraith man, I can't remember his name, but Judge Wraith, we'll call him that, yeah. He just starts saying, "Oh, I want you to take your top off. I want to see your breasts. I think you look good." And then the crowd start jeering, and that's the other thing. So the crowd are animated avatars from people watching, including the people in this cell or prison, for want of a better term. And they were saying that there were too many singers already out there, too many good singers. And he was saying, "You're so pretty that it's a waste if you don't." Anyway, it carries on, and then she's allowed to sing a song, and it's, obviously she's got a great voice, and she pulls off this great rendition of this song. But again, they say, while she's a good singer, you're too pretty, the looks will get in the way, so you should all join Wraith's channel. So they say, what we'll do is we'll make you this offer then: accept our offer to appear on Wraith's Babe Station channel, or you carry on going to the peddling. the one liner, the thing that said quickly is, and I think it was that Judge Rafe said, "Don't worry about the shame. We medicate people for that."
Mhm.
And it said quite quickly, and it's, which is also a horrible line, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because I don't know how much detail we should delve into that sort of line.
But that's it. So obviously, this compliance is, it's what's the word? It's kind of like manipulation, or I don't want to say like brainwashing, but possibly it is that kind of thing. So, and this is where it's then said that the people there are cycling to generate power. Now, again, that bit doesn't go any further than that. Now, maybe that was the intention, but I wanted to know why. Is it like poorer people are generating power for the richer people? Is it just that we live in a world without power, so it's volunteers or people that just want to make money? We don't know, but all we know is that it's said we're cycling to generate power. So I think whether it's the drink she had, whether it's the fact that she doesn't want to do the cycling, whether it's the goading of all the audience as well as that, but she accepts the offer. And again, for me, there's a subtle, not so subtle bit, but the female judge wipes a tear from her eye because I think she knows what she knows what she's doing to this girl. So then it cuts back to Bing, and you see Abby appear on the Raves Babe channel. But now, like you were saying earlier, he can't skip the adverts now. He wants to because he does want to see her because he liked her, but he's only got 8,000 credits and he's now forced to watch her because he can't skip it. He smashes the screen, takes a shard of glass from it. So you think, is he going to kill himself? What then happens is you see him earning credits, cycling, earning credits till he can get enough to appear on the show. And then he pretends he's gone on there to dance. And when he does his bit, but then, I know I'm going to hand over to you because I kind of want to see what you thought about this bit. So if you explain kind of then what he did, because that's ultimately the end of the show now, isn't it?
Yeah, and you might have to correct me when I get this wrong, but it felt like he was almost trying to make a stand, because I originally thought he was going to attack the judges.
That's what I thought, yeah.
I thought he was going to get close enough to attack the judges, but he put the shard to his neck and then started speaking about a load of stuff.
It was like he was railing against the system, wasn't it, about what they're doing?
He was making a stand, but then almost... He was making a stand against the system, but then the system rewarded him by saying, do you want to publish this and make a stand more often? And so then he almost, maybe because he took the compliance drink that the girl took before she went on.
He didn't. Again, there was a little bit where I think he must have picked up her empty cup, so he pretended he had. And the reason I just want to come back to that is because, to be honest, I thought that speech of his, that rant, was the best bit of the whole episode.
Yeah.
Because he just was so angry, wasn't he? And he actually did look genuinely pissed. And like you said, he was holding it to his neck. So I thought then he's going to kill himself. Yeah, ultimately, they all start applauding him and think it's like a piece of theatre. And like you said, they said, do you want a show on it? So it then finishes with him basically, I think it's like twice a week, he does a message to the people to complain about the system.
Yeah. And now he's in the system. He's part of it. So his kind of journey, and you picked up on it a moment ago where you said he just looks so unhappy. It's almost like he obviously not a happy person. He's obviously in a situation where he's struggling and hasn't got much purpose for life. And what happened is the thing that eventually pushed him over the edge and made him a bit insane. And because he became insane, he got rewarded for it by coming out of the system and being part of the system, or however you want to word it. So yeah, it was an interesting finish. It took me by surprise what happened. I honestly thought he was going to violently hurt someone.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I thought he was either going to kill a judge or he's going to kill himself. But then, and just to finish, what then happens is when he finishes his broadcast, it zooms out and he's still in what is essentially a cell, but just a nicer one, isn't it? It's a bigger room, nicer furniture. And he's actually looking at a real landscape, like a forest. And that's what I was saying earlier. We don't see a real outside. Now, the way you just said it then has kind of reinforced it in my head, is that both of them ultimately went on, and whilst you could say you're disappointed in her for taking the offer, she wanted to leave that life of cycling because she thought it would be better, I guess. But then he's done the same thing. He could have stayed doing the pedaling, and like I said, he's just done a really impassioned speech. but then he's just taken their offer, and all they're doing is now monetizing him.
Yeah. So he almost becomes part of the problem that he's moaning about. So he's gone full circle almost.
And you wonder if it's because if people are feeling unhappy about it, so if you air that, it's almost like, well, they're not so bad because they're showing a program where they're criticizing themselves. I don't know. So what do you think overall? We'll keep the scores to the end because I've got some other things I wanted to bring up about it as well. But what did you think overall about the episode?
Well, before we say that, there was just one other thing I kind of noticed. I thought it'd just be worth bringing up, and because we haven't mentioned it yet, it's the whole avatar system, and the whole, like you said, you did a throwaway comment about paying money on like clothes or shoes for his avatar, because that's obviously, I don't know when kind of the avatar kind of come in, but it feels like that episode was released before all that stuff started happening in real life, where we kind of got to the point where we were like buying skins or stuff for games or etc. etc. But the thing I was going to mention was the whole avatars watching the reality show, because that weirded me out a little bit. And like obviously when there was one girl who cried in her cell, wasn't there? And then her avatar cried in real life, or was it the guy? I can't remember which one it was. But then I was thinking to myself, that a couple of years ago, there were sporting events exactly like that, where you were watching from home or from a room, and your face was put on a screen to watch the event in live. Like I know WWE did it, and I think there was probably some other sporting events which put people's faces on screens during COVID and lockdown. So I thought that was kind of interesting how that almost was that was almost told way before COVID and way before pandemic, and kind of became, that element almost came true in some respect.
That was really interesting because like you said, that's what came to mind. The only other thing I remember during COVID was Ant and Dec's program where they had the audience on a big screen as well.
Yes, that was the one, yeah.
And I was thinking, that is a mirror image of that. It's just they weren't avatars, but now we've got the metaverse, right? Which is avatars. And what you do, you're spending money on fake things. And you said something about, you're not sure when it came out. Now, I think skins as a thing in games, I think it's been around for a while. I was just looking because there was a famous one where you could buy horse armor in a game, and that was 2006. But I think that was fairly new, and I think it then really got on, so probably roughly around the same time. But just to quote, I did look at how it compared to the real world, this episode, and the iPad was actually only released in 2010, so only the year before this came out. So you couldn't really say like tablets, because iPad was really what exploded that scene, right?
Yeah.
So this was kind of before that. Yes, we did have iPhones, and we had cell phones, but it's before that screen addiction, I think, kicked in. So I think, again, it was probably ahead of the curve on that.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because there's also other things on there as well, which... So you asked me how I felt about this episode. But we'll kind of go into it because it goes into my next point, is I found this episode hard to watch. And if you asked me, did you enjoy it? I would say I'm not sure. And if you asked me to watch it again next week, I probably wouldn't. And I don't know, there was just something about it. I think the world that it was in really annoyed me and really got to me because of the whole adverts on in your face, the whole screens everywhere. I think about myself in that situation, and even things like they ate the same food every single day. No one really talked to each other. And I think I found myself finding it really hard to put myself in that position. So I'm not convinced I enjoyed this episode. The other thing I struggled with, like we mentioned, there's no zoom out. So there's no explanation of how they got there, why they're there, what is the bigger picture. And that kind of annoyed me because I felt that if that had happened, I think it might have felt like a better episode.
Because I'm an advocate of, I don't think you always have to know everything, but for me, I just wanted to know why they were there. Did they volunteer? Were they forced to? Was it better there than it was outside? And also, like, the judges on that show, were they part of this system? Basically, I wanted to know, was there a normal world out there? Or were there loads of these things? I mean, not everyone, surely not the whole of the country could be in one of these things. But
she said when she came in originally, didn't she? She said she wanted to be with her sister in almost like a different environment, but they had no space, so she had to come here. which makes me think there was multiple of these systems set up.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know, we say the word throwaway comment, but there's multiple throwaway comments that are made, which makes you think there's a whole tangent that this show could have gone on and could have explored it, but they've just done it in a throwaway comment.
But you know what's funny? Why you were saying you didn't enjoy it, but I think all the things that you said that you didn't enjoy it, I'm wondering, is that the whole point? It was maybe it's meant to feel kind of claustrophobic and now, like I said, it is an image because we are on our screens a lot of the time and we are subjected to these pop-up ads in games and stuff like that. Even on YouTube, I mean, the worst thing these days are these bloody unskippable adverts, right, on YouTube. So maybe it's just a reflection of that.
The other thing I'd want to ask you as well is, there's an element on this reality show of human exploitation for reality TV and entertainment. How do you think that exists in the world today? Like, is there elements of this?
I think so. I mean, and it's like you're reading my mind, because my first point I had on it was about spending money on fake things rather on the real world, and I think that's where we're at now. Yeah. My second one was controlling people through reward and entertainment and using people's desire as objects to continue the cycle of TV entertainment. Now, I think we do. I mean, somebody becomes famous on one of these reality shows, and then they're always in the mags, weren't they? Lads mags, especially the women. And now that reality TV is morphed more into things like Love Island and, all these kind of shows. And I think it is purely, what is it? Is it like the commoditization of people's lives? That's what it is. Reality TV is massive now. It's probably the biggest thing on TV. And it is about TV companies exploiting, quotes, normal people.
Yeah, because there's lots of situations in their show. Like, I don't watch Love Island, but there are sort of situations where there'll be like a couple on a reality show, and they might throw in the ex-girlfriends to kind of, mentally manipulate all the contestants, and you think that's kind of the same, isn't it? That's human exploitation. That's playing with people's emotions to get a reaction so they can film it on telly and broadcast to the world.
And it was the thing about the addiction of the audience. So it was like that show, that Hot Shots, was their one true escape because everyone was watching it, weren't they? Yeah, I think it's just the thing about how, even however bad it is, because you saw the people were goading her into accepting that role, weren't they? It was almost like a, like you imagine like the gladiator battles and things like that. The crowd were chanting, weren't they, for her to accept it. In terms of the episode as a whole, I'm going to agree with you. I didn't like it as much. I thought it was a good episode. I just think it probably could have been 20 minutes or so shorter. I wanted to see more about why they were there. But also, I was trying to think how to explain this, and I probably still haven't got a good way of saying it. The first episode felt weird because it wasn't really about technology at all. It was a real shock thing about how people use technology, right? When I think about, and this will be interesting when we rewatch the episodes, when I think about Black Mirror episodes, I think of some really clever, futuristic, or what's the word, like dystopian kind of programs where technology is or weird technology or advanced technology is part of everyday life. Whereas this just felt like, again, people being trapped in a room, being forced to do something. Do you know, it felt a bit ham-fisted in the sense of screens everywhere and that vending machine and the avatars. It just felt it was a polar opposite of the first episode, if you know what I mean. It was like it was tech everywhere, whereas like I think the next episode actually is going to be that one that I remember you and I once spoke about at work, about the memory, like the hard drive for memories that you could rewatch.
Oh, okay, yep.
So that's what I'm talking about. I feel like a lot of the episodes had that kind of chilling, suspenseful, underlying, innovative use of technology rather than this, if you know what I mean. And I think that's why I didn't particularly like this one. I think it's still a good episode, but yeah, if I was to rate it, I'd probably actually only give it like I'd only give it like a 5, I think.
I was going to say 5.
We're gonna have to what's the word? Collaborate on it next episode. We have to have different scores.
Well, at least working out the averages is going to be quite easy.
Yeah. But you know what I did as well? Like I said, I had a look. So the iPad was only released in 2010, so the year before it. X Factor started in 2004, and Britain's Got Talent started in 2007, so just a few years before it. But you know the strangest thing, right? A year after the episode broadcast, inmates at a Brazilian prison were offered a day off their sentence every time they spent 8 hours pedaling bikes hooked up to generators.
Really?
Yeah. And then I fact checked it. I also looked at the BBC. I found the same story. Yeah.
Wow. I wonder if it was inspired in any way.
Yeah, it was amazing. They were offered a day off their sentence if they spent 8 hours pedaling bikes on generators. And then I didn't get when this came out, but you could then also, pre-orders were open for an exercise bike that you could use to generate electricity for the home. It was a bike called Regen. The Regen was promised to charge 14 iPhones in the space of a single 1 hour workout.
Wow, we're in a cost of living crisis at the moment. Let's get those bikes in.
So that's what I was going to say. If you compare it to like now, and bear in mind it was 12 years ago, you can see some of the things that he's used obviously the influence at the time, but that episode is pretty much spot on certain things, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Also, like, and I don't know, I'm trying to wrap up, but the way the judges were as well, kind of. I know you said about the guy that was like Simon Cowell, but all three of them were kind of hit home with like we've all seen judges just be nasty, just like horrible, just to kind of make an impact again for telly. It goes back to exploitation, doesn't it? But you kind of watch that, and I think the judges were cringeworthy, but I think they're cringeworthy because we relate that to what happens now.
Yeah, if you take out the fact, obviously, that they sort of coerced her into appearing on like a pornographic channel.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything like that happen.
Yeah, no. But what I was going to say was, if you take that out, normally on each show there is a judge that just lays into people and is just nasty. And like you said, I think that just feels spot on. So I think there was so much you got spot on. Like, well, now we've got screens everywhere. I mean, even fridge freezers have got screens in, right? Smart screens.
Yeah.
And mirrors. Mirrors have got it. So you've got that. You've got the whole fake world, avatar world and spending a fortune. I mean, we see every month in the paper about little 6-year-old Billy who spent £2,000 on his dad's credit card buying in-game stuff for FIFA and things like that.
So easily done. My son actually subscribed me to Amazon Music by mistake, just by talking to Alexa. So he asked for a song, and Alexa goes back, "Oh, do you want access to Amazon Music?" Just a yes. He didn't realise what Alexa had said, so he just said yes, and all of a sudden I was subscribed. It's so easily done.
Was Alexa turned off the next day?
Yeah, she's out in the bin now. She needs to behave herself if she wants to come back in this house.
But yeah, I mean, and that's what I was going to finish with. I just thought the thing about the Brazilian prison, that was just amazing. So yeah, overall, like I said, I think 5 out of 10. I think for me, the best bit was, I just thought his speech at the end where he just got something out. I just thought that was brilliant. I love that bit.
Yeah, and he did play that part very well as well. Because I think he literally had to play the whole, you've got to be miserable the entire time. And that was really the only emotion he showed at the end, wasn't it?
Okay, so the question is, and I think you've already said it, would you be happy, or could you, if it meant you were taken care of, could you just spend your day waking up, pedaling for 8 hours, and then...
No. The pedaling for 8 hours would probably be okay. I think that's probably the only bit that is doable, but the whole in that room, boxed off, no natural daylight, which we haven't mentioned. There's no natural daylight anywhere. It's all computer screens everywhere. Even... I'm going on a bit of a rant now. Even the gesturing to skip, you know how he did that? I can't remember how you described it earlier, but even that looked annoying. Like having to gesture to the screen in certain ways. You're like, I'd much rather click a button, like, or hit a touch screen. So yeah, I would go insane if I was in that world.
Yeah, that was it. So if you can imagine, they were flicking through the screen, so they were just waving their hands in front of it, and then if they wanted something like to watch something, they would almost do a beckon, like come here motion.
Yeah.
Or if they didn't, they would like do a shoo away kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, there are certain things where we need to iterate and get better, but still put a controller in my hand, and I'm much happier than that. I don't need everything to be totally hands-free.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, was there anything else you wanted to say on this episode?
There is one more to add, sorry. There was one point I noticed where he was in his bathroom at the start and he was brushing his teeth, where the mirror was actually black And I did kind of wonder if that was
okay.
like a little pointer to kind of. I was like, oh, that's actually a Black Mirror.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. But yeah, well, cheers, Dan. Thank you for rewatching this with me this week.
No, thank you very much. It's been good fun.
Yeah, we will see you next time. Like I said, at the time of recording, I'm not sure how often I'm going to put these out because it's a little mini series. But yeah, stay tuned soon for us reviewing episode 3 of season 1. We'll see you soon.
1, 2, 3, 4. If I want your opinion, I will give it to you. Come on, take what we've got, 'cause you need it. Don't make us get a spark and bullshit.